Good evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School District School Committee meeting for Thursday, March 24th, beginning at 6:07 p.m. This meeting will take place partially remotely pursuant to the law signed by Governor Baker on February 16th, 2022, an act further extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which includes an extension until July 15th, 2022, of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will be recorded. And I will take a roll call. Ms. Stout? Ms. Tolley?
Present.
Ms. Games?
Present.
Ms. Rogers?
Present.
Ms. Seabrat-Long? Present. And I am here.
And then we need to move to executive session.
And now we will move to executive session with a roll call vote to adjourn to executive session pursuant to the MGLC 30A Section 21A, Paragraph 2, to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the district's bargaining or litigating position and the chair so declares it, coming out for regular open session at approximately 6:30 p.m. Roll call. Motion. I need a motion.
Second.
Roll call to adjourn to executive session. Ms. Stout? Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrat-Long? Aye. And I am an aye. So we will adjourn to executive session at 6:09 and return approximately at 6:30. All right, welcome back to our regular session. Our next item on the agenda is public comment. Before I check for public comment, I just wanted to welcome Christina and Molly in person tonight. So welcome, ladies. We are back in regular session at 6:30 p.m. Looking for anyone in for public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to reports and discussion and start with the update on the Harwich Community Playground presented by Mrs. Olduck.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Mary Olduck. I'm the very proud principal of Harwich Elementary. And I was telling someone today, I think this is probably the happiest school committee presentation I have ever made. So, yeah, we're just going to get the presentation pulled up here. Thank you, Leah.
Oh, wait, whoop. Let go of the mouse for a second.
Hands off. Great. Can I touch it now?
No, you can.
Okay.
Or not.
There we go. Okay, so I'm here tonight to present an update on the status of the Harwich Community Playground, which is located at Harwich Elementary School. All right, what did I do wrong, Leah? Just click?
Should be able to just click on this one.
No?
Yep, so it's just, there's a little bit of a delay.
Okay, well, hopefully I didn't click it too many times. Okay, so just to turn back the hands of time and give everyone a perspective and understanding of when this project started and why, we'll go back to October of 2018. That is when there was an independent third-party inspection done by Playgrounds of New England, located here on Cape Cod. And the recommendation with that, it's a certified safety inspection, was that the Castle in the Clouds playground be removed by the end of 2019. Castle in the Clouds, is anyone who's lived here from any period of time knows that it was a very beloved, well-known playground on Cape Cod. It was built in the 1990s by a just monumental community project here in Harwich, and so it was, a really tough time just for the community in terms of what that playground meant to Harwich. With that news, the HES PTO took the bull by the horns and raised about $80,000 through two blockbuster, just record-breaking fun runs in the winter of 2019 and 2020. And fun runs, we did those in partnership with Boosterthon. Boosterthon is a company that helps schools raise money. Without their partnership, we never could have raised this kind of money through the PTO. And they were, I think we had 81% of our students participated in the fundraising, although they all participated in the fun. We had 67 local businesses support us. We had donations from 37 states and 4 countries, and it was just an incredible experience for the school and for the kids. When we got the news about the playground needing to be replaced, the HES PTO also started the application for the Community Preservation Commission Act grant funds and submitted an application on October 1st, 2019 for that to the town of Harwich. Right around that time, there was some discussion about the actual who would spearhead this project, because as I understand it, the school district leases the town and grounds from the town. And so there was a decision made during that time period that the project would be transferred to the town of Harwich. So I'm here tonight as a well-informed messenger for the status of this project with the town of Harwich. who has been just shepherding this along through the pandemic for us. So this school committee actually voted on October 24th, 2019 to close Castle in the Clouds due to the safety concerns for students and the lack of compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. And the playground was actually demolished by the Harwich DPW right around October 30th, 2019. And so enters COVID. So this would have gone before the May 2020 town meeting for approval. However, that because of COVID was postponed until September 2020. The town meeting did approve the CPC application, which at that point in time was a Town of Harwich application. And it wasn't until May of 2021 that the town meeting actually voted to obtain the $500,000 from the Community Preservation Act funds, and that's just all processed with how these grant monies are transferred and made available. So during the pandemic, we have experienced delays just like everyone has with supply chain, weather, meetings being postponed, people being unavailable because they've been ill. But things are back on track, and I'm here to tell you where we stand with that. So I'm going to click this mouse again and hope that the next slide comes up. There we go. Okay. So what have we been doing for 2 years? What have our kids at Harwich Elementary been doing for 2 years without a playground? So you can imagine having no playground, being in the middle of a pandemic, having to cohort recesses by class. Last year they could only play with their classmates. And I just huge shout out to our teachers for their creativity and their level of engagement with the kids at recess. Here are just a few shots from our kids having 2 years worth of, as I said, good old school recess fun, chalk art, hula hoops, jump rope, basketball games, field hockey games, football games, all facilitated by our teachers, along with, thunder sticks and all sorts of different things that the kids have asked for. The bottom left-hand corner there is the ever-popular Gaga Pit, which we actually inherited from Chatham Elementary. It's been great. For those of you who don't know what Gaga is, it's like a kinder, more gentle dodgeball. It's conducted in an octagon shaped frame there, and you see the kids are holding up one of their new recess balls there. In the middle there is our assistant principal, Mrs. Hughes, who is going around and refreshing the recess bags for our classrooms. Over the last 2 years, we've probably spent around $8,000 on recess equipment. You can only imagine keeping 500 kids busy, engaged, happy outside at recess every day for 25 minutes. Balls and things break and things wear out, and so we've been, very pleased to be able to just keep things fresh for them and keep them engaged and happy outside. But it still does not take the place of a state-of-the-art playground, which meets all their other needs in terms of gross motor development and cooperative play. Okay, so I'm going to use this pointer. Hopefully there's no cats around who might be interested in this. So this is a site plan for the playground, and right here, this is the school. This white space right here is the school. God bless Mrs. Marcinsick, Mrs. Branchute, Mr. Zabelski's whose rooms are right here. This is one of the reasons why we push the playground away from the school to provide more of a noise buffer here for the classrooms, as well as Harwich PD and Harwich Fire Department also asked that it be pushed away from the building to allow for more access here for our emergency vehicles. Right here we have the existing preschool playground, and this little square here is the existing YMCA infant toddler playground. Neither one of those are going to be impacted by the construction, which we're really happy about because they'll be able to still have those spaces for play. This is the new preschool playground. It does have a fence around it. I'll show you those images in a second. And there's a gate, and it'll be, accessible from this larger playground, which is geared more to our older kids. And I'll go through those play elements in a second. Okay, so here is a rendering of, if you were looking at the playground from, this is the preschool playground that I just spoke about, and this is the gate that gives access out to the larger playground. There is more to it than this is from one of the vendors from Burke. There's another play set that I'll show you in a minute that comes more out this way. So all of these play pieces were chosen for their high level of playability and number of kids who could use them at any one time. So there's very high play value in the playground, and of course, the beloved swings. And you'll notice the handicapped accessible swings. They're located here and here. This is actually a handicap accessible merry-go-round in the preschool area as well. Change. Okay, so this is the other play element from the other vendor. This was designed to have more of a nautical feel to it. You can notice with the pilings here, and this is one of the elements that the committee was most excited about. This is a shark that's meant to be climbed on. And that's going to be one of the first things the kids see when they come out of the school. And we, just have all the elements here just to make it look like more of a seaside type of experience for the kids. All right, so the news that we have all been waiting for are the construction fencing is actually going up tomorrow. It's been staked out, the corners are there, the kids have been told not to touch those stakes. However, I did just talk with the company, and they said even despite the rain today that they will be putting the fencing up tomorrow. The estimated construction duration is 5 to 6 weeks, weather and structure dependent, of course. And everything is on schedule to be delivered and dropped to the playground from both of the vendors. I'm beyond thrilled that there is no impact on the current vehicle traffic patterns, because that side of the building is where our kindergarten first and first grade families and older siblings drop off and pick up. And as I mentioned, the existing preschool and YMCA infant toddler play areas are not impacted with the construction at all. Also very happy that there's going to be minimal impact on where the K-4 recess play spaces currently are. They're just going to have to push back a little bit further beyond the construction area. Their hard top for the Gaga Pit's not going to be touched. The existing basketball court is, even though that actually predates Castle in the Clouds, is still available, and the Little League field. So we have all that space back there. So I did tell when we met with Childscapes last week, I did tell them to be prepared that they are going to have 500 supervisors on the job. I'm sure that watching this construction is going to be absolutely fascinating to them. And they said, just tell them not to touch the fence, and they're welcome to watch. So that will be a lot of fun for them, I think, to just watch this come up and for it to be completed. So for us, we are very much excited for this to be a station for our playground, to be part of our field day celebration, even though the duration of the construction is 5 to 6 weeks. We're, I think, 10 weeks out from field day from that time period. That's the hope, that when on field day that all the kids will be all over that, and perhaps we would have had a grand opening prior to that. So that's where we stand. Great news, so happy. It's been 2 years plus in the making. These kids have not had a playground, and you couple that with the pandemic. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. And everything they've been through. It's just great news. Any
wonderful.
questions, if I can still talk? Sorry.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Any questions, Tina? Ms. Gates?
No questions, just as part of the playground committee. This
Yes.
is so
Yeah,
exciting.
That's right, Tina. You
Yeah.
were part of that with us. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, discussion?
Oh, can't wait for field day.
It will be exciting.
Oh, yes.
Can't
Please
wait to
come.
watch the construction.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the
Thanks,
MSBA
Leah.
application statement of interest.
I'm going to, yes. Can I do that? Good evening, school committee. I'm Michael McMillan. I'm school business manager, and I'm joined by.
Travis, Director of Facilities. Good evening, everyone.
So we have been working right up to the last minute on our MSBA application. We commissioned an engineering report on both roofs, which we received the Chatham one this morning and the middle school report about like an hour and a half ago. So while those were very useful and they have informed our applications, it has just meant everything's been running a little bit behind. Both roofs are just at 25 years old, or will be shortly, and that's right at the cusp for MSBA applications. So we are really kind of on the wire. I think it's worthwhile submitting them anyway, and we've really outlined the need for replacing the roofs, in the applications which I've circulated. We've gone into some detail on the impact of leaks coming through the roof, the impact on classrooms. Buckets in the classroom. I mean, just to take a quick aside, we have been doing a lot of repairs, and I checked with both buildings today, and there weren't any significant leaks despite the rainfall today, which is good. But there is still water, infiltrating into each building. That is bad for the building. It's damaging roof, ceiling tiles, and floor tiles. It has caused problems with electrical equipment in the past. And we know that it will lead to, we have damp insulation up there, particularly the middle school, and we know that there's a risk of mold and so on when that happens. So we've reflected all that in the applications. I'm happy to go into I'm happy to share the reports and go into them in more detail if you like, or the applications. But we can open it for questions, and then we need 2 very specific votes. So the MSBA give us the wording of the vote, and that was included in your packets, and they want to see that exact wording voted on tonight. So can I open up for any questions or any thoughts?
Questions, discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Tolley?
Who provided the engineering report?
It's a company called Tremco. It's a company we've used in the past, and they were available.
That was my next question. Well, how were they selected?
Yeah, it's just a company we've used in the past.
Okay.
Rick's used them in the past here, so they're familiar with their roofs, and just by coincidence, I've used them in a previous district. And, it's not like I can show you some of the pictures they provided, actually, if you'd like to see some of the damage. But yeah, they were, well, in the past we have a good experience with them. They just had the person leading on this project had some personal problems, and that led, so he was out unexpectedly, and that's what led to the delays.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so do I have a motion? Ms. Seabrett-Long?
Sorry, just before we do that, I
Yeah.
did remember one thing. So the one thing is you'll see in these applications, we do have to give an indication of which is our priority projects. And
It's a good thing I'm making the motion.
yeah, I was going to I could just have let this slip in and nobody would have noticed. But
Michael.
based on the information provided in these reports, the middle school roof is in worse condition and has significantly more detected areas of wet and damp. I mean, they're both really similar in terms of need, so I think there's still, I think if one gets in, they might both get in, and if one doesn't, neither of them might get in. But so for when we have to indicate, we have in our application indicated the middle school.
So is that a separate vote that you need, or is it all
No,
together?
that's just
Okay.
for information.
Okay.
I didn't have this in my packet, so that's why I'm borrowing Meredith's. The motions prepared on the front are what you want me to read exactly? That's what we need to do for the
Yes, one at a
MSBA?
time, one for
Okay.
each.
All right, so I move that vote 1, Chatham Elementary School, having convened an open meeting on March 24th prior to the SOI submission closing date, the School Committee of Monomoy Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated March 24th, 2022, for the Chatham Elementary located at 147 Depot Road, Chatham, Massachusetts 02633, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The replacement of the current school building roof under priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Monomoy Regional School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Could you just say that again?
I will in a moment.
Roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Okay, second motion. I move to approve vote 2, Monomoy Regional Middle School, resolving having convened in an open meeting on March 24th prior to the SOI submission closing date, the School Committee of Monomoy Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated March 24th, 2022, for the Monomoy Regional Middle School located at 425 Kroll Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The replacement of the current school building roof under priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Monomoy Regional School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tolley?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're good?
Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Oh. Okay. Moving on to the MRSD regional agreement and warrant article wording.
Sure. What do you want me to share first?
So, in your packet are two things. There's the side-by-side regional agreement and also an updated presentation. So we have provided both of these to both towns on Monday, is that right? When we were at the Chatham Select Board meeting, the Chatham Select Board voted unanimously to move forward the red line version as presented to you today. The only things that are different in this is that we have incorporated the last and final feedback from DESI's legal team. So this has been fully vetted by the legal department at DESI, and we have incorporated into the red line some very minor changes. They're noted as you flip through. There was on page 3, there's the sum total of after statute that it says and/or regulation. On page 8 is the spot that was perhaps the most substantive change, and that when we last came here, the last line in bold said that kind of referenced that the budget that would be moved forward by the Budget Finance Subcommittee would be approved by the school committee, and DESI just wanted to clarify that said proposed budget is subject to the approval by the majority of the school committee. So it's, so again, it's just restating what that it's a vote by majority vote, but that's that's the section that I think was probably the most substantive one, and perhaps the third rail, because that, as I mentioned at the Chatham Select Board, that had been the original language that was there, just talking about that a proposed budget shall be approved by a majority vote with at least one committee member from each member town voting in the affirmative. That couldn't happen because it violates the way the state law is saying that regional school district votes can only be approved by a majority, that there can't be a qualifier. But by talking about the process that we use, that we have both Chatham and Harwich representation on a finance subcommittee that meets to bring forward a budget, and that there would be voices in the affirmative at that on whatever budgets move forward. So DESI has given this the thumbs up. Then on page 11, there's just a little, as defined below in section IXB, that again, another just sort of DESI request for clarification. And then in the sections under method of assessing, there was some fine tuning that Michael added just to make sure that the process of how we get to calculate the assessment is sort of codified in the agreement. And so there are sort of little sub bullets as you go through this that now are there that weren't in the last iteration that we brought. That DESI just wanted to make sure that one day when Michael's not here or I'm not here or whoever, that there's clarity in the language and how that assessment gets calculated. I think other than that, the other things are as presented last time. I don't know if there are questions, but I do think that the committee should vote the changes, because these documents are the ones that both towns are putting into the warrants, and my understanding is that both select boards are having this side-by-side document will be what will be in the warrant, so that it's there. And I said that my understanding is that the towns don't print in color, but you could have this not in color and still understand what's going on. But I said we could, if it's going to provide some clarity, provide color copies as people come in the door at town meeting.
Ms. Stout, do you have a question?
Yes. question, comment. So, it was my understanding I had requested to be at, I know I can only be there, or any of us can only be there that are not on the subcommittee, as a public person, not to be involved with commenting or any of that at these finance committee, subcommittee meetings. And the last two, which means the only two I know of this year, I would just, I need an assurance that all school committee members that are not members of the finance subcommittee will be gotten an email several days in advance whenever it's scheduled, so we know, so we can at least watch, because that's an important education. If this is going to be taken away from us knowing everything, or being part here, get any paperwork that's involved that goes back and forth between school, you know, the members that are there, so we can fully, when it comes to us, know what's happening.
Okay, Sharon, yep, absolutely, and I believe,
I need a guarantee that that happens, and I'm fine with it.
Okay, so I believe that you were informed on Friday, last Friday, when this last finance subcommittee meeting was scheduled. You were informed, and so just look back in look back in your email, in your personal email. There was an email letting you know about the finance committee subcommittee.
I just looked at, well, I don't find it on the my school committee one, but anyway, I would like all of us to get that, because I can't find it in mine. It doesn't say in any subject on all of them. I'm looking back, and I could be wrong. I'm not saying
Sharon,
that I'm right, but the last one before this, I've just forgotten, and I can't find it right now.
So, Sharon.
Say on Monday, what was the date for that?
So Sharon,
Yeah.
because we wanted to make sure that you
Yeah.
received it, we sent it to your personal email because we thought that you were checking that more often. So it went to your Cape Cod,
No.
Oh, no.
nope?
No. So please send it to both then, because I check my school committee one more than I do my personal
Okay,
one.
so moving forward, we'll make sure that it goes to both.
But I could miss it, any one of them again.
Okay.
Thank you. And that would be for everyone on the school committee that's not there, so we could know to, at least, because one of our number one things is
Sharon,
to be aware of finance.
all of these
So-
subcommittee
Yes.
meetings are posted publicly. They're all posted.
No, I'm asking for courtesy thing to be sent to an email to all the school committee members, because, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I don't have, if I was a member of the public, that's fine to go to that, but we're not members of the public, we're members of the school committee, so I'm asking for a courtesy email to go to the non-subcommittee members.
Okay, so I appreciate you wanting that, and we can make sure that happen, and I can check with the other members on the school committee if they would like that as well.
Thank you, that's fine.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Ms. Gaines?
Superintendent, could you clarify, please, that if this passes in both towns, could you clarify that this would be applied to the FY23 budget? Can you just kind of walk us through that?
Short answer, yes. So Michael and I and Mark Terry are the school district's attorney, and Mark's associate, Mr. Falk, have worked with us. So not only have we gone through the steps of making sure that DESE has vetted this with their legal team, so quite literally all we have to do is notify DESE that the regional agreement has been approved by both town meetings, and just have the commissioner know that the legal team that this has been fully vetted. But also, in a second here, Michael will share with you the votes that, or the motions that are being, what do you call it, the articles that are being put into the town warrants, and specifically the articles regarding to the regional agreement are actually laid out in a way that specify what the assessment will be on the town if both towns pass, so that it can go into effect for this coming fiscal year. That's what we've been aiming for, from the get-go.
Thank you.
Could I also just point out one other thing that loops back to the last discussion point relative to the regional agreement? But a question came up at the Chatham Select Board where I think some wonder, it's like, oh, now we're changing the regional agreement when there needs to be a new roof on an elementary school at Chatham Elementary. It's like, and two things to emphasize. Number one, as Mr. McMillan brought up today, we can't do anything about submitting an application for a new roof until the roof is 25 years old, period. We're now at 25 years, so we can. Two, we also have not done any major repairs to Harwich Elementary School. So neither elementary school in since the district has come together have had to have big repairs at them. This is the first big one, and it just happens to be when we're at this point of revising the language.
I think another important part to bring up from the meeting was when it was discussed that this is a one-time thing for Chatham, that it's going to be a huge increase and a difference in the taxes, but then things are going to level off. And
Definitely.
It's not going to be so difficult for taxpayers in the long run.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Seabrett Long?
Are we looking for a motion?
Yes.
I would be happy to.
Okay.
I move to approve the Monomoy Regional School District Regional Agreement and Warrant Article wording as presented at tonight's meeting with the updated corrections from Desi.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Tully?
I just wanted to point out to the public that at the Chatham Select Board's recent meeting, let me back up for a minute. There's maybe some concern that Chatham voters won't approve this because it means paying more for our elementary school. But the Chatham Select Board also just voted to approve a 2% increase for the short-term rental tax and designating 1% of that increase specifically to fund the elementary school. So looking at the revenue that was generated last year from that tax, it would have yielded about $800,000 specifically just for elementary school costs. So Chatham in general is looking at a way to have sustainable revenue to offset the increased costs of running our elementary school. So I think that's really important to note. Of course, that also will be going to voters at town meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that that is noted and part of the kind of landscape and conversation about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle.
That's great information. All right, no other discussion, then a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Gaines?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Oh, you staying?
Will we stay or will we go?
Okay. Moving on to Strategic Planning Steering Committee, I will pass the mic to Ms. Tully to start.
Thank you. You'll see in your packets the information that had there been a better kind of group effort of communication and process last time should have been in your packet last time, but this is kind of everything that I talked through. So it's all here in writing, and this really just kind of lays out the internal process that the steering committee has been going through since we began meeting in January. So again, this is almost, this is pretty much word for word what I shared with you during our last meeting. And today, the kind of broad strokes of where we want to share with you about an update as far as where we are is that there's consensus right now on the steering committee of, we've identified one of the specific things that we want, we hope that our strategic plan yields us is this portrait of a graduate. And there's the portrait of a graduate process and the strategic planning process. And we thought that we should attempt to do these things in 2 phases. Phase 1 being portrait of a graduate and phase 2 being the strategic plan. The reasons for that are several. One being that the portrait of a graduate kind of serves as this anchor or North Star about the whole vision of what a graduate of Monomoy looks like. And from there, the details about that can really be woven into a strategic plan. So everything kind of syncs up to that ultimate vision or portrait of a graduate as we would create a strategic plan. So setting out with that portrait of a graduate seemed like a good first step to start with that, start with our anchor. And also recognizing that we have our current strategic plan that was being implemented and then the pandemic hit. And so as it's been acknowledged many times, there's a lot of really good work that is left undone in our current strategic plan that got interrupted. And so the idea is during phase 1 is we would embark on this portrait of a graduate process and extend our current strategic plan for about another year to kind of finish it out, continue the assessment of it, and see where that, once we have a little bit more time with this current strategic plan, see how that then might feed into our next strategic planning process as well, thinking about what from that needs to carry over as it lines up or doesn't line up with our portrait of a graduate. So that's kind of our consensus at this point, and what were our overall process that we would be putting forth to you tonight for feedback on is to see if the committee agrees or has any sense of whether or not they agree or would approve to go in that direction of doing phase 1 where we are doing portrait of a graduate and with an extension of our current strategic plan. And then phase 2, once we finish the portrait of a graduate kind of project and have that extension time with our current strategic plan to go into a next official strategic planning mode for our next strategic plan. One other thing to point out is I mentioned last time too that we've been having conversations with potential facilitators and organizations who could lead us through portrait of a graduate, strategic planning, some combination of both or one or the other. And so we have a lot of information that we've gathered, a lot of kind of pros and cons that we're weighing. But one of the things that we thought worth mentioning again tonight is recognizing the range of costs that this can go. So we've received bids or quotes for $10,000 and we've received bids for $130,000. So there's really quite a scope and a range as to what this process could potentially cost. Some of those, like a lot of people are kind of somewhere in the middle. We are, our last strategic plan that we went through was done in-house. It took place over a day. And that was, a total of $6,000 when all was said and done, $1,000 plus $5,000 for other things. Yeah. So if you think about what we did last time, that was a one-day event. What we're proposing is a much larger scope of strategic planning. So we're also asking for feedback tonight about a figure that the school committee would be comfortable investing in a strategic plan. And I think that's important to ask ourselves what we value. Well, how much do we value a strategic plan, and what is the value of it? I know some folks don't see a lot of value in strategic planning. They think it's a document that sits on a shelf and it's a lot of lip service. I personally, I come from a world where I've done a lot of strategic planning, and there's a lot of great people that are part of the process that make it a living, breathing document that really does energize and inspire a direction forward. I think we're at a really interesting time in our district. We're coming out of COVID. We're coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of exhaustion. There's a lot of stress. There's been a lot of division, and just, families in our district and children in our district we've all experienced something pretty significant together. And so I think we're at a really interesting time for our district to be able to figure out how we can breathe new life into how we want to move forward. And so I think that's part of the conversation, and the question is, how do you put a number on that? What that is worth, and what's our hope for the impact that this strategic planning process and the portrait of a graduate can have. And if you look through the handout that I gave you, it's why we want to do this is to generally be more strategic around fulfilling our mission in order to best serve our students and our community. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but we can go a lot of different ways. We can go about it a lot of different ways, and that's ultimately what a strategic plan does, is help us figure out how to get there. So I say all that and open it up for others on the steering committee to chime in and other questions.
Questions, discussion, chiming in from?
So I could just share. I think it would be a good question to wrestle with as a group, this portrait of the graduate versus strategic plan, like which order. And I do think Mark and I think Sharon and Danielle, I think would agree that we could do the portrait first. I do think if we do that, that Mark and I should work with the team and bring back to an upcoming school committee meeting sort of a rewrite of the strategic plan in terms of timelines and what needs to get done and when, because we went through an exercise with the team this past Tuesday, and just where what have we accomplished, where's their work to go. And of course you're looking at timelines that were thrown catawonk with COVID, so I do think it would be good to sort of refocus the efforts, and we try to do that each year, but I think if we're going to extend it, bringing that back would be important.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, when we talk about this, for instance, I didn't know that it would be brought up to ask the school committee if they had a number in mind, because of course other members haven't been privy to what we're talking about, but Scott brought several people to us. I called them, maybe I think Mark and Danielle also contacted people, but there were a lot of people out there that don't seem to be what we want at all. But Scott brought some people. Of course, Danielle and I only had to see one or two of them. And so one of them that he brought forward was something that we liked a lot. And it happens to be more expensive than some others. But when I think about this, I was hoping we could do it before town meeting, honestly, but I'm not sure if that's possible. I don't mean the whole thing, but at least get started, because it just is the idea of bringing our towns together and having representatives, 100 people, whatever we had last time, having people excited, involved, students and everything like that, and with you might say glitzy or something, whatever, but something that is really people walk away with that is wonderful, just wonderful. to me, I think, just like if you're thinking about our ELA program, we spent like 4 times as much on that. I'm not suggesting 4 times as much really, but we went with something and it's beginning to get some feedback that looks really promising. Mark really believed in it. So I think we're going to have to go back, our committee, and look at some other people too, but it's hard for me to think that we want to put some number on it before we really see what really wanting. That's all.
Any questions? Oh, Dr. Carpenter?
I might suggest that we have our procurement officer just reinforce how, what we need to think about, when we have costs over $10,000 too, because that's.
Hello. I thought I was going to get to sit this one out. Hey, so for procurement of goods and services is governed by Chapter 30B of Mass General Law, and there's a number of different components to it, but one, and it's basically done on the total cost of the contract. So if the contract is going to be over $10,000, then you are to solicit 3 written quotes. So you have to prepare a written specification, send that to at least 3 vendors, and then you have to go with the lowest responsive and responsible vendor. So that I'll just carry on with the thresholds, and that's from 10,000 to 50,000. So if it's over 50,000, then you have to issue an invitation for bids, or in this case it might be what's known as a request for proposals. And request for proposals, actually you don't have to go with the lowest bid. You have to prepare criteria, essentially selection criteria, with which you score each vendor, and you go with the most advantageous, the vendor's proposal most advantageous to the district. So, yes.
That's helpful. Ms. Tolley?
A clarifying question about that. So in the window of between $10,000 and $50,000, there's no criteria that the district could establish for
no.
the services that they wish to receive?
You can't have qualitative so really the law is like you have to go with the lowest bidder. Mm-hmm. But it has to be so the task really is to be really clear on what you want. So I mean it is difficult in processes like this where there's relatively subjective proposals and how do you choose between them. But if you ask people to do a certain, so one way to do it is to be like, we want this number of meetings, this number of people, and so on, and then see what you get back, because then essentially you are comparing like with like, or you can have qualifications, or so you really need to develop specification that really matches what you want, so that any quote you receive is acceptable, and then that's why then you go with the lowest, because that's supposed to be in the best interest of taxpayers.
Were you holding, you had your hand up with them? No?
I did, but you can come back to me, it's fine.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Ms. Stout?
So, I am definitely not a business manager or anything, but having brought up the ELA program, we certainly didn't go to the lowest. We just went with the one we liked the best, and we maybe had certain criteria that fit that we really liked. When I spoke with the superintendent of, I don't really want to say which school because I don't want to say anything that could be considered bad. In my mind, it was all positive. She said they didn't go up for bid at all, and they already had things earmarked in the budget, and they used that, and there wasn't any of that. So, I mean, in doing this process, we've been able to eliminate some people because they're in California and can't fly out here, it's cost prohibitive, or somebody can only do in the middle of the day or some sort of time where our townspeople, they'd have to leave work to do it. So I just think it's very premature to look at money till we have all the stuff. Danielle and I have not seen what there's, and maybe it will all be copacetic. We're just not there yet, that's all.
Ms. Games?
Oh, do you want to
We
go?
can go, that's fine.
Yeah, I was just getting clarity. I was just getting clarity for my mind with a couple of questions. So over 10,000, but under 50. You're saying that we should have 3 written vendors.
No, you have to solicit 3 written
Okay.
quotes. So
Solicit.
you just need to try and get them, because often, so this sounds really frustrating and annoying. It is, like, so we would be, if we have, $12,000, we're supposed to get 3 vendors in. 3 vendors don't want to come in and quote you every time for all these projects. So that's why you don't have to have 3 quotes. You just need to try and get 3 quotes.
Oh, okay.
So what we'll do often is we'll write up a specification or just an email it to 3 vendors, and if one of them gets back to us, that's good, we're good to go.
Okay, and then, so if it's, okay, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm being flippant. It is a genuine attempt to get quotes. They just don't always get back to us, but you still have to move forward, and that's why.
Okay, so there's an attempt. And then if it's over 50, you're saying you have to put out an RFP, is that what I
Yes,
understood?
or an invitation for bids, which is, so you use an invitation for bids where it's something that's more like, there's less qualitative criteria involved. So, you might use that if, for purchasing a particular item, because you just know which item you want. You just want 100 of them or 1,000 of them. So you just get your request bids and you go for the lowest. But if it's more of qualitative criteria, like we want to pick a particular, type of, food service provider or something like that, you don't want to just go for the lowest bid. You want to really get into detail with the vendor. Then you can put out an RFP, get proposals, and rate them based on, your selection criteria.
And then just one other question. So as we're looking at this, and we're talking about a phase 1, which makes sense, what you propose. So we're talking about a phase 1 and a phase 2. So are we looking for phase 1 and phase 2? So is the bid for both of those together, right? Or is it separate?
So strictly speaking, so it depends what you're doing. So
Okay.
if you know you're going to use the same vendor for both, you're not allowed to split it up just to avoid procurement regulations. I mean, if you have a legitimate reason for splitting it up, like, well, we're going to use this vendor, if it goes well, we might use them for the next thing, but we don't know for sure, that's fine. But if you're, if you want to buy 100 widgets and that's going to put over $50,000, you can't just buy 2 groups of 50.
Okay.
That's called bid splitting.
All right, that's helpful, because I just wanted to clarify, so we're not required then, what
Yeah.
you're saying is to go with the same vendor for 1 and 2.
There-
Okay, I was just trying to understand.
So there are some occasions where you don't have to follow the procurement, the same process. Just since Ms. Stout brought it up, I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit. So there is something called a sole source procurement, where you essentially determine that there is really only one source for that goods or services, and you're really only allowed to use that over $50,000 for software maintenance, library books, and educational materials, which includes things like curriculum, because essentially, I guess the thinking is they're hard to compare. So although we did use sole source for the ELA curriculum, but that's not to say we didn't do a process to determine the best one for the district. So the director of curriculum and his team, did a whole process to make sure we got the best one.
Okay.
So you can also, see now it started, procurement is so much fun. So you can also have, there is also state contracts, so that's how we get out doing all this process. So the state essentially does all the procurement for you, and you can just select vendors off the state contract. Unfortunately, in this kind of thing, people aren't often on the state contract, so it's difficult to use it for this kind of strategic planning, consultancy type stuff. But a lot of our supplies and services like W.B. Mason, they are on the state contract, school specialty. So all the stuff there, we don't have to always go out to bid for.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Seabrett Long?
I don't even know anymore.
I forward you into submission. Like,
No,
whatever.
now
give
I'm
up.
like, no, really confused. No, I'm not. This was great. I like visuals, and I like to be able to see it, write on it, talk about it. So this was perfect. So I feel like that was really good information. Financially, business-wise, good information, so that when we're looking at numbers and things like that, those are things we have to consider for sure. But I don't feel like we're quite there yet, because we don't have, so to speak, numbers in front of us yet. It looks like the steering committee spent a lot of time kind of working on vision and scope of work, and, you know, what the four of them are, you know, trying to achieve, so that's great. The back side of this paper had a timeline on it, which is one of the things that I requested, so that, thank you for that. And when we were actually, so let's see, I have a couple questions, but I'm gonna kind of go through the questions and then maybe somebody can address them. It looks like item D, March 24th, school committee approves and votes on scope of work. The agenda is strategic planning steering committee recommendation. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. So I guess my question would be, I'm not, maybe it's not a question, maybe it's, I'm not sure that the school committee needs to vote on a scope of work, because the steering committee is doing your job, and that's your charge, is to come up with a scope of work. So this presentation is just giving us an update on how productive you guys have been, or what, not how productive, but what you guys are working on. So that's great. Provided the timeline that's tangible, that's good. It looks like March 25th, it says put out bid with deadline of April 11th, which is actually tomorrow. And I know when we were working on the agenda, one of the reasons, and I think this is what happened, one of the reasons is that I think why we had steering committee recommendation is because we had a document that I'm missing a couple documents in my folder tonight. So, like, I didn't have this one. So we had talked about we'd seen because one of the other things I'd requested, Danielle, was when you guys were ready to give us, like, who are we looking at and what are the numbers? Because one of the questions I had was like, what budget are you working with? And then we went back and it was like, well, the line item's 40,000. And then I was like, well, I think that the steering committee needs to think about, like, what, you know, with information like Michael just provided and stuff, come up with what's reasonable, because I don't know what's out there for strategic plan. Like, I don't know how much it costs. All I know is what we spent last time and what's the line item, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where we land. So I saw a document, but it's not in my folder, that I thought was going to be in here for us to talk about tonight. So I didn't know if I'm the only one that doesn't have that document, or if it's something that someone has that we can share, because I think it would help if the directive is for us to vote on strategic planning steering committee recommendation. Does the committee have a recommendation tonight? Because that's why it was on the agenda.
Yeah, I think, so a couple of things. One,
I think I'm done.
okay. If I could, so I think tonight what we're asking for, as far as like presenting our thinking on phase 1, phase 2, phase 1 being portrait of a graduate and extending our current strategic plan, phase 2 being another, or like a strategic plan, and asking basically for your approval. Do you agree to continue moving forward in that line of thinking and process come then being able to get much clearer with what specifically we're looking for in phase 1, so that we can come back on April 14th with a slide that, Scott, you have a draft one going of people that we've been talking with. I'm sure some of those folks will fall off of the slide because we know they're not relevant to phase 1. So
when I saw the slide, it did have, so I guess I'll go back to the steering committee, and you guys have to determine, based on your phase 1 and phase 2, which of those facilitators does phase 1 and phase 2,
exactly.
Right? First, they come off if they don't do phase 1 and phase 2,
exactly.
is my guess. Second, I had a column that had, like, whether it did both or just one. So you guys have already been able to determine, like, of those facilitators, who will do, like, a phase 1, phase 2, if that's what you're calling it.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
slide that you're referring to, it's never been in an agenda packet, so maybe you saw it in a meeting with.
No, it wasn't in an agenda packet, it was supposed to be in the agenda packet.
It was never ready to present to the school committee, that slide that you're referring to.
Okay, so we don't need to vote on anything tonight, because right now it says Strategic Planning Steering Committee recommendation, which is what we put on the agenda because that was what was going to be presented in the packet. You're telling me that that was pulled out of the packet by someone, and that's why we're not voting on that tonight. So you don't need us to vote on your phase 1, phase 2, because that's a steering committee decision, and whether you find a facilitator that fits that. And then you're going to present to the committee on April 14th the bids to the school committee with what your recommendations are, in what you're saying is now going to be another updated version of what I've already seen.
Yeah. Generally, I think in our steering committee conversation, in our language of school committee approves and votes on scope of work, tonight, this conversation is about getting your, I'd say, consensus approval, not like a formal approval of, do you agree that this is a good direction to keep moving? That's all we meant by this. And if there was feedback to tweak the way that we were thinking about our process, this would be the time to bring that up and talk about it, so we could then course correct if it feels like there needs to be a course correction.
I trust the steering committee.
Okay.
And I just, go ahead, Dr. Harvey.
I actually do think it would either behoove the committee to vote on, do you have a portrait of the graduate first and extend the strategic plan, or vice versa? Because I think, just speaking from, I think, where our global mindset was, if we were to step back at the beginning of the school year, I think we were thinking it's like, okay, strategic plan's ending, we need to do another strategic plan and have it ready to go by the end of this year, and thinking that likely a portrait of the graduate might be a thread of that. And I think in the conversations we've had, I think reversing the order is where I think the four of us think it would make sense. And I wouldn't want us to go down a path and then be bit with people not in agreement that flip is where they want to see it.
So I have a question. I'm not sure who to direct to. I have two questions, actually. So that being said, maybe that is the recommendation that we're looking for, that you're looking for, a motion that the steering committee is recommending a phase 1 of the portrait of the graduate and a phase 2 of moving it to the steering committee. That's just a kind of a question out there in the air. But, and again, I don't know this process well, but to put out bids tomorrow, does that mean that the steering committee has decided who they're putting bids out to?
Well, that's a good question. I think we have a handful of people that we know can, if we were to move forward with phase 1 portrait of a graduate, we have a handful of people that we have reached out to, we've had initial conversations with, they've given us some quantitative data about what their process could look like, how much it could cost. I think the conversation becomes then having more clear alignment about what we want our process to look like, and going back to those handful of folks and saying, can you resubmit us something that is specific to this amount of meetings, or in-person versus virtual versus hybrid, something like that. So I think the answer is we have a pool of people that we know we could go back to for more specific bids if we are focusing on portrait of a graduate at this point. Does that
But are you
answer your
doing that by
question?
tomorrow?
Well,
I don't think tomorrow is
Okay.
realistic. I think we can slide that. I think we had intended to have a meeting next week. It's all blurring together, but we have a meeting next week, and I think we can come out of that meeting with again, I think the important thing is if the consensus is, or the decision of the committee is to seek a facilitator for portrait of the graduate, then we can hone what we're specifically requesting from the different vendors. So I think that's why I do think it's an important decision for the committee.
Okay, so potentially that is the recommendation, and then for the April 14th meeting, which is our next meeting, you potentially would be prepared to bring that maybe draft document to share kind of the breakdown of who you've talked to.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
That's the vision, and that's our thinking in laying out this timeline.
Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Stout? Thank you.
Yes, it's a little bit tinny, so I think I might be just reinforcing what Scott said, but, so our committee did decide at our last meeting that we chose to go with the portrait of the graduate first, because that would inform whatever went on second as an outline of procedure. And we haven't, as a group, we don't have debate on this, we just don't have enough information on this yet. We don't know if we want to go with the same person or group for both parts or not. But the portrait of the graduate, we will figure that out, and that is the first step. And then we may or may not need more time to figure out the second part of that, of going forward with that. It's just hard because we'll all have to, or at least the people that didn't meet these other people that have things, because just knowing a name and their price, I can't, and I don't think any of us want to recommend. Scott does have an advantage because he's talked with them all, and maybe Mark has, I'm not sure, but that's the work that has to be done yet. Still, all of the notes here that you have are all pretty accurate of the scope. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but yes.
Jackie?
Can I ask a clarifying question? And I'm not sure if it's Michael, Scott, or Danielle. So portrait of the graduate and then strategic plan, two separate things, phase one, phase two. Hypothetically, you could pick facilitator A to do portrait of a graduate. And then you could say, then we want to use facilitator C for the strategic plan. But they're really going to intertwine at some point. Facilitator A for the portrait of the graduate could cost $10,000. Facilitator C for a strategic plan could cost $6,000 or $20,000, whatever it is. So we're actually looking at two separate projects, two separate budgets, two separate proposed RFPs if required, if it's over the 50,000, or within the 10 to 50, needing the more specifications. Is that correct? Instead of one facilitator strategic plan, which is what we did last time.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So, go ahead.
And I want to kind of echo what Scott was saying earlier, actually, about recognizing that where we started off talking about strategic planning has really shifted. And if you look even here on the part of our process, we say number 10, adopt the new strategic plan by Thanksgiving break. This timeline was created early on in our process. So I think that really shows you how our thinking has kind of morphed and evolved pretty organically, I think, as we've just continued to have really good conversations and collaborations in the steering committee. So I think that item of saying that we saw ourselves adopting the new strategic plan by Thanksgiving break, that was really coming out of the strategic plan is ending and we've got to get a new one done, soon. And that really isn't the case anymore. That isn't how we're seeing it. And so I think that might be worthwhile to formally recognize as a committee that we are adapting our timeline for the strategic plan and potentially voting on going for phase one, a portrait of a graduate, phase two, strategic plan. Knowing that it's kind of all this all kind of a bigger process, but there are phases to it.
Ms. Gaines?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I'm hearing this correctly, I think what you're proposing is you're asking for whether it's a vote or a consensus tonight, to move in the direction of portrait of a graduate with I wrote down with current strategic plan, and then phase two will be the creating of a new strategic plan. Is that right? So it just sounds like you're wanting consensus to move in that direction. Okay, well, that's easy enough.
So my wondering, go ahead.
No,
So my wondering is, from what Jackie just asked, where phase 1 and phase 2 are going to be kind of more separate now than one process, where there's going to be maybe 2 budgets, if we do need more of a formal vote to support that tonight because of that piece. Ms. Zemrat-Long?
from what I said to what Mary said, I would not feel comfortable voting on the phases until I actually have something tangible in front of me on what the reality of what the budget is, which is what I asked for last time. So that table would be good once it's updated. I can't vote on whether phase 1 and phase 2 are good unless I have all the pieces to the puzzle. If I vote tonight, let's say, yes, I think, and I do in spirit, I think that phase 1 and phase 2 is a good idea, 100%. Like, yeah, it's the dream, right? But all of a sudden we all voted on phase 1 and phase 2, and steering committee goes, hey, you guys voted on this, phase 1 and phase 2, and now I'm looking at a $20,000 phase 1 and a $20,000 phase 2 facilitator. Now I've backed myself into a corner, because now I'm like, what was the budget we were going in with? And we talked about how 40,000 isn't necessarily the budget we're going in with. So I need to have more information from the steering committee. I appreciate all this, but I need the business side of it. I need to see all the things before I support, I mean, yeah, keep going with it, great. But I'm not going to stick to phase 1 and phase 2 until I see all of it.
Ms. Gaines?
Well, just hearing what Jackie's saying, it's possible, I guess, if you take what you just said, that we might have one facilitator that gives us a really good deal on phase 1 and phase 2. So then you're looking at having to figure that out. So
Yeah.
that is a possibility.
So maybe we're just looking at for consensus to keep
Yeah.
Keep on keeping.
keep it on.
Maybe an updated timeline, if you, I don't know.
Dr. Carpenter?
I also just want to point out sort of the reality is that we carry a line and have carried a line in our budget that is for strategic planning. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're hiring a facilitator in a year. It's the line that the team goes to determine that there's money to go bring in the PD to move the strategic plan forward. So it's an important line item to advance the plan, and we have to just be cognizant of the line item. It's like great to have a plan, but if we don't have the money to advance it, so it's there is that. It always comes back to the good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar.
Yes. And that's a good clarification,
Yes.
though. Thank you for that.
That the
That's
budget, the
important.
line item
Yeah.
is not just for the facilitator, it is for the whole strategic plan.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you for
Kelly?
that.
I actually have a question, I think, for Michael. Didn't catch up. I don't know if you have this information at your fingertips, but I'm wondering if you would be able to let us know how much of the FY22 line item for this has been accounted for? How much has been spent?
How much has been spent so far? None.
Yeah. So there's been no costs related to moving the strategic plan
forward?
in
No.
FY22?
No.
Okay.
Unless you guys are getting coffee and donuts at every meeting.
Yeah.
No, I mean professional development or anything, related to staff
No,
or
no,
curriculum or
it's all-
anything. That's,
Yeah.
okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And we have to keep in mind that we have, in the last month and a half, sort of emerged from, we're at this place where you can start bringing people back together, which is good.
Right from under the rock. Thank you.
Ms. Gaines?
Just my last request, having heard all of this, however, as you begin or move in the direction of facilitators, I think we do want an in-person, so whatever, hopefully that can work out, because I was part of that in-person that happened 3.5 years ago, whenever it was, and it was a very pleasant, wonderful experience, and team building and community building, so I would just, invite in person if you can do it, yeah.
Great. So do we have a consensus for everyone to the steering committee to continue on in this way.
Yep.
And then hopefully by April 14th, you'll bring even more information. Excellent. All right, so moving on to, now, we are reporting out from the Finance Subcommittee meeting held March 23rd, 2022.
Hi, that's me, Chair of the Finance Subcommittee. Nothing much to report out. We did have a meeting following Michael and Scott coming back just to kind of report out on the Harwich's Selectmen's meeting on Monday. And we just discussed questions and concerns that were brought up by the committee. And as a subcommittee, our recommendation at this time is to hold on the current budget as presented and voted on. And we have requested through Michael and Scott that we're waiting on more detailed directives from the Harwich Board of Selectmen because that wasn't provided. So at this point, we're status quo, and there'll be no changes in the current budget.
Any questions, discussions, Ms. Tolley?
When will the Harwich Select Board be revisiting the district budget? Do we know that yet?
I think it's Monday again.
Monday, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. Moving on to FY23 budget. I mean, there's no changes, so we could just push
Just what's
through.
in, I guess as the chair, I can tell you that in your packet,
Yes.
there's the information that was presented to the selectmen, both Chatham and Harwich. So you have that in your packet if you want to review it. But this is what they were presented with as well.
And I just want to give Michael a lot of compliments on cranking out one-pagers in a short period of time.
Yeah.
With a graphic.
Yeah. In like 4 hours,
Wow.
just to be clear.
Take the chip off the old block back there.
That's right.
Simple and graphics.
I love this.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good.
I feel like I say this all the time. I'm a visual learner. I know lots of other folks are visual learners. And so getting information in a visual way really helps me, especially when it's data related.
All right.
So thank you.
Good.
Almost as cool as the budget workshop document, because that one was also.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one. Ms. Gaines?
Was this what was presented at Harwich and Chatham? Did
We gave them
both?
copies.
Did they both get copies?
They-
I know. I think was this what you sent to
sure.
Harwich?
We
Whenever
brought- I don't
that
think-
I call it a
we
hearing, but
presented
whatever
the
that meeting
whole
was.
slide pack to Chatham. I don't think we gave them the one
Did Chatham get
pagers.
this too? When you were there
I don't
Tuesday?
think so.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
they didn't. We had them, but didn't have them.
Maybe it was just Harwich that got the one pager.
Oh,
We
okay.
we brought them to the building.
Oh, and they didn't get them? Okay. Oh, wow.
Probably didn't request them.
They gave us we gave them the whole presentation.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is I had heard on the Harwich side that, and I thought it was just this, that this was helpful
Okay.
to see kind of at a glance.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pass
All right,
along, or at least
so
what
we'll
I
share-
had heard.
We'll share with Chatham.
That it was really nice to be able to just see it at a glance visually. There was a lot of appreciation.
We can send it along to Chatham.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, moving on to Sr3 Grant Presentation discussion.
All right. It's back to me again. I'm going to share a presentation, I hope. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is just a short presentation to go through and provide a little more clarity, hopefully, on how we're planning to spend, or how we would like to spend the ESSER funds that we're receiving. So this isn't on for a vote this week, so intentionally, because we talked about that you would vote on it at the last meeting. What I would like to do is present this information to you, get any feedback you have, and present a kind of final detailed budget for your approval at the next meeting. So the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 provided ESSER 3 funds that were in addition to ESSER 1 and 2. It combined, it's $2.3 million for the district. That's ESSER 1 is $169,000, and it has to be spent by the end of September of this year. So we are actually spending that money right now. SR2 was a further $654,000, and we have another year to spend those funds, and the SR3 was $1.5 million, and we are able to spend them through to September of 24. So that actually takes us in just to the first few months of FY25. So that's how you get to that total of 2.3 million. So the district's proposed plan for spending the ESSER funds is focused on these four major areas. They're the biggest chunk of expenditure, and I'm going to go through each of these in more detail, but the biggest chunk of expenditure is around improving or providing more instruction to students, particularly in math and ELA. We're also very aware of the need for more supports in social and emotional learning and mental health. And then these and the other two areas have kind of specifically been raised around air quality in response to COVID and that sort of facilities and equipment, and also in health services, as you can imagine. So in instruction, there's multiple plans in place here. We want to extend the school day. There's plans particularly in the middle school for before and after school clubs. And we would like ultimately to be able to provide transportation to those, so that is an ongoing challenge due to the lack of drivers. We're providing math support through 2 math interventionists and an additional math instructional assistant, and those are for in both the math support and the reading specialists. And while you have 1 reading specialist, the hope is they will be sustained throughout the life of the SR grant right through to the end. We have planned to professional development, math curriculum. We're now thinking we have the ELA curriculum, so we're starting to think ahead about the math curriculum. We'd like to provide professional development there, and then also professional development in both the middle school and high school. We have been providing additional support for English language learners beyond the school day, and we've already run a summer school at Harwich Elementary School that went well, and we'll be hopefully looking to do that again. So we've done it once, and we had planned to use ESSER funds for the summer school, we received an additional grant that was able to fund that, but we'll be using ESSER funds for an additional summer school. We had a wellness teacher here at the high school that was part-time, and we increased it to full-time. That's just for this year. We have set aside funds for any initiatives that come out of the strategic planning process. So there's a deadline on this, by the way, just to remember. So we hope through the strategic planning process, we'll get recommendations, not for the process itself, but for initiatives, to improve the priorities that are identified in that process. And then MTRS payments, that's just as part of the way federal grants work. We have to contribute to maths teacher retirement scheme when we include salaries and grants.
I just have a clarifying question. So what we're looking at in these little blue boxes, is this a total over the 3 years? This is a total,
yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I'm just looking at some of these numbers and going, I hope it's 3 years.
Yeah.
All right. Just making sure. Thank you.
So it's social and emotional learning and mental health. So we are looking at hiring an adjustment counsellor for the next 2 years at the high school. We are already started, and we want to continue. We have a contracted service that provides support for families trying to find services within their community. We are also looking to get contracted service to provide additional mental health supervision. That's both directly to students and also working with staff. And that would be a contracted service, so we would bring a specialist in to help provide those services on a part-time basis. We are looking to hire an additional social worker. That would be a district-wide position and funded for 2 years. And then, as we said in the last slide, looking to set funding aside, but this time for initiatives coming out of the diversity task force. And finally, we included an additional stipend for an SEL instructional leader. Any questions on this slide? I can hop to the next one. The next couple are a little bit more straightforward. facilities and equipment. So a few things here. The biggest is clearly HVAC repairs and upgrades. And then we're also hoping to purchase a passenger van for community-based programs at the high school. Any questions on these? I won't read them all out. You can read them.
Can I just, another clarifying
Yes.
question, if you don't mind, Madam Chair? So when we look at passenger van, 65,000, is that in 1 year, or is that going to be spread over 3 years?
That's to purchase one van.
Okay, so it's going to be a one-time?
Yes,
It'll hit
one-time
one of
purchase.
these 3 years?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, all right.
Michael, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Is that the same van that,
No, that's in addition to the
Okay.
other ones, because we
There's
need
another one.
additional ones, and the ones we have, a couple that right now which will no longer be functional. within the
but
next
isn't
couple
like
years.
one back ordered?
Yeah, we have 2 back ordered, and this
Okay.
will be a third.
Just to,
So yeah, so
I can-
even though we're looking to put the order in for this soon, but they're not even open for orders right now, for another 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then it'll be just the way things are right now, there'll be a long delays on
Okay.
receiving it.
Missy Bretlon?
Yeah, I just had a question on the additional nurse.
Yeah,
Just think about sustainability, and we need them. So the FY22 was funded through FEMA, emergency relief
Yeah.
funds for COVID. So we're looking for the 23 school year.
yep.
So this is going to be a one-time, or is this
Yep.
over 3 years?
This is just for next year.
This is just for FY23,
Yeah.
so for FY24, we're going to be looking for funding for this nurse if we
Exactly, yes.
find that
If we
needs to
want
be supported.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Tully?
That actually leads to kind of a bigger question I have, is I see some of these things as being able to be one-time
Yeah.
purchases or things, but some of these other things, I can see the need to just continue to level up and continue
Yeah.
providing these services. And
Yeah.
so what kind of thought or plan is being given to how we do that? Or
Yeah.
evaluate whether or not we need to do that?
Yeah, so I think, evaluate, that's the key word. So what we're really trying to do is have a process in place. Principal Oldak and I were just discussing this. So we have a process in place to evaluate the effectiveness of these projects and initiatives. Not everything, like buying the community van, once it's done, but the ongoing projects like the EL summer school, which I think is a really great idea. We want to try and work out a way that we can evaluate that, and so we can see what impact it has, and if that justifies a place in the budget post ESSA. And likewise for things like the math interventionists, the reading specialists, trying to see, well, look, is this really delivering for the district? And if it is, then maybe we need to make the case for those to be part of the budget priorities going into the FY25 budget. So, yes, I'm really conscious of that we need to be really conscious that these items are all going away by FY20, the end of FY24, unless we come up with a plan for them, and so we need to be really clear on how that plan and the criteria for whether or not we want to continue things.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, I really love this. I like that it's fairly specific. So my one question is on your phraseology, Michael. When you said, because I'm going to ask about the adjustment counselor at the high school for 2 years.
Yep.
So you said we're looking to hire. So does that mean we will hire
Yep.
this adjustment counselor for the high school for 2 years? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted clarity. That's great.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, we're not voting tonight.
Nope.
We're voting next time.
Yep.
May I?
Yes.
Sorry. One thing that might be helpful, or at least I think it would be helpful for me, is if you could include in this when you could see
Yeah.
implementation
Yes.
of each of these things happening.
Yes, I will
And
include that in the next one. I was trying to make it really simple, so maybe I could have included that as well, but.
That's okay. Second
Yes.
round.
Yeah, there you go, right,
All
I'll
right.
keep trying.
Thanks.
Okay, so number 8 is to update on school committee goals. So I just wanted to put this in front of us. We're a little past halfway through the year, but a lot of these things are happening. they're in the process of, but I just wanted to bring this to our attention and see where we need to go with it. It can just be kind of a review for tonight and to be put on the forefront. Ms. Stout? Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to lower my hand, that's all. I don't have a question.
All right. So any questions, discussion around this? I feel like we're, I guess I'll talk. So I feel like our goal number 1, we're kind of coming to the end of that. Hopefully all goes well moving forward to town meetings.
How many years in the making?
Pretty goal every year.
At least since I've been here. Goal number 2, I believe that we're working on through the Equity Task Force. I think that one thing that I would do as the chair is consult with our Equity Task Force to see kind of where they are in this process. And then we can think more about that for ourselves as a committee. I believe that we're following through with goal 3, kind of monitoring the SR grant funding, which we actually just heard about. We're moving forward with developing the 2022 strategic plan, starting with the steering committee. And then the update on the school committee handbook, I think, is one that maybe we need to pay a little bit more attention to by all of us kind of looking at the handbook. And because the first step is to review and confirm the information within the handbook based on the school committee approved policies. But then the next step is what are those policies we want to send or ask the policy subcommittee to look at? And I don't think that we've done that. I think the policy subcommittee, and tell me if I'm wrong for those of you that are on that, but are looking at things and bringing policies to us, but I don't know that we've brought anything from the handbook back to you. Ms. Ebret-Long?
I can go backwards. Number 3, clarifying the roles and responsibilities of subcommittees in regard to the role of chair, procedures, and voting. I feel like that was one of the policies that we went round and round and round on in the very beginning. So I think we have definitely concluded with that one. And I think reviewing and confirming information within the handbook, Section A, policies that need to be updated within the handbook will be shared with the policy subcommittee. Every meeting, Danielle does a great job of actually just asking us if we have anything that we want to bring forward that someone's brought to us. And sometimes we have them and sometimes we don't. And Melissa really does a good job at making sure the committee is staying up to date on what we have to be updating and things that need to be on our radar at all times. And I will say that this year has been a very busy year with the policy subcommittee, and I'm sure I don't speak for myself, and I speak for all of us, and that it seems like we haven't even had time to just work on some because we wanted to, and it's all been working on them because we had to.
Okay.
So we certainly can fit in if people have policies that they want us to specifically look at. And I would say that as a school committee member, but as part of the policy subcommittee, I will probably take a look at our handbook and just kind of take a quick look through and see if I see anything. Maybe in the next couple months with our meetings, we can go over that. But I think we probably could check a lot of boxes of ones we actually already have done and we don't realize it. So
Perfect.
we could work one out.
And I want to remind folks too that the policy subcommittee is currently reviewing and working on one of the policies that came from the committee, which is our travel policy, and really looking at emergency travel provisions. And then another one is our governance policies. So two have come from the overall committee to the subcommittee, in addition to the ones that Melissa is telling us we need to be because they're mandated.
They need to be updated.
Yeah.
We're very busy.
Good. Excellent. Any other questions or discussion, Ms. Gaines?
Yes, just a quick question under, let's see, goal number 2. Let's see, number 5, explore having a liaison to the Equity Task Force. I don't think we formally picked someone, but I know that Ms. Stout has been attending. So was our intention, when we said explore, was our intention to actually make it permanent to have a liaison? Like when we go and we sign up every year, and was that our intention to add that as a liaison?
I think I would have to look back. I believe putting it in our goal, I think it was, but I would just have to clarify that.
Okay.
I don't think it's written that we were wondering if it was okay for us to have a liaison and add it to that like kind of subcommittee sheet. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I think it's more exploring the practicality of having a liaison to the Equity Task Force. That's how I would interpret it.
Okay.
And in fact, I would say if she's attending the Equity Task Force, then yes, we have achieved exploring and having a liaison to the Equity Task Force. But the way you're reading it's different, so.
Yeah, I'm just, and if, would you mind, well, and I see Ms. Stout's hand up, so maybe she'll
Perfect, Ms.
answer my
Stout.
question. And my question would be.
Yeah, so,
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is it my turn to talk?
It is, yes. Yep, your turn,
Okay.
Sharon.
So, I have been attending most of them, but I'm just, if somebody else really wants that, that's fine. There's a steering committee, and there are all these meetings for that, and then there's the regular committee that has many more people in it, and then that breaks off into other subcommittees, and so I'm just trying to have you know that I can't keep track of everything that's going on. I'm kind of aware, of course, Mark's there, he's keeping track of everything, and it's been really good to be in as much as I can on that, but I'm not sure unless somebody didn't have another subcommittee. If somebody only had that as their subcommittee, it's just pretty involved to keep track of all of it. So, if anyone who wants to jump on to do anything, I just want your expectations to know that I haven't been able to be at every meeting. And, if somebody else wants to do some of that, that's great.
So I guess my question is it of value to have a liaison, or do we get our, needs met, questions answered when Mark comes and reports? So I guess that's where I'm going with my question.
Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. I also happen to be the Chair of the Equity Task Force. If I may offer a suggestion. So your 2 student representatives are active members on the Equity Task Force. So if I might offer a suggestion, we could figure out a regular schedule to have, I could work with them and we could do a regular update to the school committee. Whether it's monthly, bi-monthly, I could work with the chair and we could figure out how often the school committee would like an update. I think it would be a good way to involve those 2 members as a part of a regular part of your meetings. They're actively involved and they're doing a lot of work, and I think it would be a good way to have some purpose for their attendance, if that seems like something.
That sounds great.
I think that's a great idea.
Put them right under
Yeah.
section E.
We're all excited.
Yes.
I wanted a presentation, so here we go.
Yeah, I would love that. I was actually writing down, we need an update from the task force. So I would love a regular opportunity to hear from them, especially the students, and yes.
Excellent. So I'm meeting with them next week. We're meeting about something else, so I'll bring it to them when I'm meeting with them.
That would be great. And maybe if we can make it so it's not on the same night as the other student representative, then we get to see kids more often.
Yes.
Which would be great.
Super.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Moving on to reporting out from our executive session. Our executive session was around just finalizing and seeing the final clean copy of our employment agreement with our superintendent, Dr. Carpenter, which the contract didn't change a whole lot. There were a few changes. We are extending the contract for 3 years with Dr. Carpenter. And the other new information that did change was we opted to follow the salary increments as the teachers had in their contract. So his percentage increases will be the same as the teacher's contract moving forward for the next 3 years. Any questions, discussion? Okay.
Do we need a formal vote?
Yes,
Yep.
we do. So I'm looking for a motion.
What?
Ms. Seabrat Long?
This is what happens when Nancy's away. I'd like to move to approve the superintendent's contract as presented in the executive session and approved.
I'll second.
And a roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrat Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Sorry, I was thinking about something. If I should have said the year, but I don't think so. I think I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Moving on to consideration of middle school land abutting stepping stones, Town of Chatham.
I think we can table this one, but I do believe that the Town of Chatham, I think the town manager will come to hopefully our upcoming meeting to discuss the little parcel of land between the bike trail and stepping stones.
Okay, great. Moving on to subcommittee representatives and liaison reports. We have none tonight. And then we will move down to the superintendent's report.
Just in terms of recognitions, I'll be quick, but I really want to give a major shout out to Rachel Barnes and Rose Richards and Deb Donovan coming out of retirement to help out on the play at the high school, which I personally loved. And it was, I think, just really good fun, and it was probably one of my favorite plays that I have seen in my almost 30 years of being in schools. So it was just, and I loved that there was some audience participation. I thought the music was great, the singing was great. So
Magic shoe.
so great, absolutely great. And the other thing is, when now in my 9th year here, it's like to see some of the seniors up there, when I remember them in elementary school, and just to see how much they have grown and blossomed. Wow. In terms of things that aren't growing and blossoming, thank goodness, COVID.
What a segue.
So we only had one positive pool this week, which was just one student. That student is one of only, we have 3 students, 3 new cases at Chatham Elementary this week. All students, 1 student, 1 staff at Harwich Elementary. The high school has 1 student and 1 staff new cases this week. And the middle school is on a streak. I don't want to jinx it, but 2 weeks in a row, smooth sailing at the middle school. So, but again, it's just fantastic to see smiling faces. And even though there was a small little uprise after vacation, we're seeing it now come down. And the way this tracked last year is it tracked into a good summer. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that it continues that way.
Good news. Wow.
Any
that was-
questions? Discussion? All right. So we just have one more action item to second reading of our 2022-2023 MRSD school calendar. Do I have a motion? Ms. Seabrat Long?
I move to approve the Monomoy Regional School District school calendar for 2022-2023.
Second?
As presented in your packet.
Sorry. Second?
You bet.
Second.
Any
Oh,
discussion?
She seconds things.
All right, roll call vote. Ms. Stout?
Aye.
Ms. Tully?
Aye.
Ms. Games?
Aye.
Ms. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Seabrat Long?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And we have had the presentation of warrants this evening, so I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call vote, Ms. Stout,
Aye.
Ms. Tolly,
Aye.
Ms. Games.
Aye.
Ms. Rogers.
Aye.
Ms. Seabrat Long.
Aye.
And I am an aye, and we will adjourn at 8:20.
Look at us
Thank
go.
you, everyone.